the problem with ideologies, as far as I'm concerned, is that they're not useful as practical problem-solving guides. Most of the problems that beset us are very, very complex, and they need to be decomposed in a sophisticated way into their constituent elements until they're differentiated enough so that partial solutions for some of the problem can arise as a consequence of practical endeavors. And that requires the willingness to do that kind of detailed thinking. And it requires the development of specialized expertise. And ideology can blind you to your own stupidity, and that's actually dangerous. So we could take the case of poverty, for example, and I think we could all agree that poverty as such is undesirable. So that's the starting point and the motivation. Then you might say, well, what is poverty? And you could conclude that it's lack of money. And from that, you could conclude, because there's an unequal distribution of resources, that if the rich would only loosen their grip on wealth, then there wouldn't be poverty. And then it's not much of a leap from that to the rich are by definition causing poverty and morally culpable for it. And even though there is some truth to that some of the time in some situations, that doesn't mean that it's always true and it's the only reason all the time. And then there's an additional danger, which is that you now have a solution, and so you're smart. You're not the problem, so that you're moral. You have a convenient enemy, so your dark, unexamined motives have a valid target, which you've already defined as immoral. And that means that you're more likely to give rein to violent impulses, let's say, that you should otherwise keep in control. And that's all very dangerous. It's not sophisticated. It's emotionally and motivationally dangerous. It interferes with proper problem solving. It confuses you as to the limits of your and depth of your own knowledge. You end up thinking you actually understand how the world works, and you don't understand it at all. You don't even understand the problems. Like, think about poverty. Okay, so what do you mean by poverty? Do you mean alcoholism, drug abuse, mental illness, physical illness, lack of education, lack of intelligence, lack of conscientiousness, antisocial behavior, relative poverty, absolute poverty? Do you mean a corrosive worldview? Do you mean lack of ability to plan for the future? Do you mean absolute privation of material goods? That's all poverty. And that's just the beginning of a decomposition. And all of those problems are markedly different. And it isn't obvious that there's one solution that will address. It's not obvious at all. In fact, it seems highly improbable that one solution is going to address all of them. And then there's the complex problem that you have a theory that identifies a problem and explains its existence and offers a solution. And so now you're going to assume that if you could only put that solution in place, that you would do that competently and it would produce the result that's intended. That's wrong. It's unlikely that you would do it competently because it's very, very difficult to solve a problem. And even if you did, it's also unlikely that your intervention would produce only the positive result that you intend and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
right.
that's a lot of problems.
Yeah, right.
And then ideology, I suppose it's the enticement to pride that ideology also produces. Well, now I have an explanation for how the economic system works. No, you don't. You don't know the first thing about it. You're like a monkey looking at a military helicopter.
Right.
You don't have a clue, and you don't even know it.